Today we are very privileged to spend the day with one of the very best, most relentless and amazing lawyers that Botswana has. He hails from the north, far away from the capital city of Botswana, from Kavimba, and definitely he will tell us all about it. It's a place that is full of animals, wild animals, it's full of water and big trees, but that did not stop him from pursuing his dream of becoming a lawyer. His name is Othusitse Mbeha of Othusitse Mbeha Lawyers. We're going to hear about his story, we're going to hear about his life, we're going to hear about the legal fraternity. Thank you so much for tuning in, and please enjoy this interview as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you. Hello.
Hello. Welcome to Othusitse Mbeha Lawyers.
May I please see Mr. Mbeha?
Okay, let me check if he's in. All right, you can go through.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Mbeha.
Morning. How are you?
Thank you so much for agreeing to spend the day with us.
Yeah.
We are super excited to learn about what exactly lawyers do.
Super excitement is an understatement.
And also we want
I would
to...
like to challenge you to pick from your closet yet another better phrase.
Hey, I'm always super excited, aren't I? Okay, I'm super elated to spend the day with you, Honorable Counsel, Leonard.
Erudite.
Okay, instead of super excited, what can I say?
Super excitement.
Yes.
You would say that you are grossly excited.
And also?
And also inordinately excited. Like excess. Beyond excess.
Alright, so what time does your day usually start, Mr. Lawyer?
Well, it starts quite early before the sun rises. In the morning, I would be up on my feet, doing my prayers in the morning, a little bit of my personal devotion, then jump in the water. That's how the day gets rolling. Okay. Until I get in the office at around 7 o'clock, sometimes just a few minutes before 7 or a few minutes after 7 o'clock in the morning. Now I start the day.
Okay, do you have like maybe your favorite coffee or drink in the morning?
My favorite beverage, not coffee.
Yes.
We don't do coffee.
Okay.
Is water.
Water?
And not just water.
Yes.
Warm water.
Okay, alright.
Before we eat anything, we take water.
Interesting.
We just cleanse the system.
Alright. No.
Not water, because
Okay, I'm getting the door for myself. Yeah, don't worry, I got it. So, Mr. Mbeha, have you always wanted to be a lawyer?
Definitely, no doubt.
No doubt.
No grain of doubt about it.
Okay.
In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. I see prayer is a big thing for you.
For sure. It's the password to any success story that I have and own. It's more like oxygen to me.
Yeah.
It's more like the air that I breathe. The oxygen I breathe, and I can't do without prayer. Much as I cannot do without the study of the Bible. It's in the African language, you would say that there used to be this mythology about lawyers, about people whenever they go to court or have a litigation, they would normally want to use any kind of muti to say, well, I've been to some traditional doctor, that's why I want this case. I don't use that. My muti is just that, prayer and studying the word. Combination of them, they give me faith.
Hey, wow. Okay, I've been meaning to say I have a question that I wanted to ask you maybe when we proceed with the interview, but I think I can just throw it in now. Lawyers and religion, lawyers and prayer, lawyers and God.
Yeah.
I always hear so much that lawyers are liars. One, that's the myth behind it.
The premises of that question is false.
Yeah.
Because most of the people who espouse the idea, the notion that lawyers are liars, have never had any personal relation with a lawyer in the first place. So it's a mere false assumption, which is untenable, to say the least. It doesn't even pass the basic minimum test, if subjected to some scrutiny. So it's a misplaced notion which cannot survive in a realistic environment of lawyers. I cannot begin to imagine why anyone in the first place would think that lawyers are liars. Mostly because the idea is leveraged by the misperception or misconception that lawyers represent criminals. We don't.
Yes, that's what I hear.
We don't represent criminals. We represent accused persons whom constitutionally are deemed and presumed innocent until proven guilty by an independent and impartial court of law. Until then, they are as good and as innocent as anyone without a charge above their head.
Can I, yes, thank you. Can I just say, can I qualify it to say some would be like, you know, the client would tell you already that, you know what, I did it, just go and defend me because I know I'm guilty, but just go and say that I'm not.
In my entire practice of nearly 8 years now, I've never, not even once, come across such a situation where a client would confide in you that they actually, in an instance of either murder or rape, that I actually did it. I hear about it in some instances. I've never come across it. So I do not necessarily want to deal with a hypothetical question which has no element of reality in itself. But to give you the benefit of the doubt,
yes, please.
Assuming that it does in some corners of the legal society, I would respond by telling you the responsibility and duties of a lawyer is to defend any person who is charged for any alleged criminal offense. So at that moment and instance, my duty or the duty of a lawyer is to ensure that that particular person is going to receive justice in two ways. Number one, substantively speaking, that is in terms of the law that defines the offense that that person has been committed. So you want to pretty much make sure that it is the right charge in terms of the law that has allegedly been violated. So we are talking here about the question of substantive law, the law that defines the rights and obligations normally of a person, or that defines what the offense in a particular case might be. And beyond substantive law, there's what we call adjectival law, the law of procedure, that even when a person is, loosely speaking, say guilty, they are still entitled to some form of procedural fairness. So even where a person might, in some rare cases, like I've said, admit that they have committed an offense, like in a case where when they are asked in court, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty, and then they say guilty. But even then, you'd still need a lawyer to assist you, to walk you through the steps of mitigation and aggravating factors, to say, even where a person is guilty of an offense, is this the right sentence given an overall series of factors that one might need to take into account? You understand? So it's very important that even when a person might in those instances admit that they're guilty, they still need somebody to represent them in court. And that does not translate lawyers into liars. No, we are doing the right thing because at any event, it is, our conduct is legislated for. It's there in the laws. What we are basically doing is not outside the confinement and the parameters of the law. So lawyers are good people. You just need to know that we are good people. We are good people during the good and the bad time, except that people come to us during the worst time of their own life or lives. But that's just who we are.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
There was a time, I believe you've done justice to the question. There was a time...
I actually gave you more than you asked for.
You always do. There was a time some lady was saying to me, you know what, this man preaches the word of God and he's doing very well. His messages are so convincing.
Which man is that?
You.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. His messages are very convincing. But
yeah,
the problem is that he's a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that lawyers do discredit the word of God in a way?
Not quite. In fact, not at all.
Because I know you are famous for preaching, and you call yourself a preacher and a pastor sometimes.
Yeah.
And then
a pastor has never been to theology school.
Yes, because you love the Bible so much.
Yeah. And actually, more than this. More than
this.
My career is.
Are you serious?
Definitely.
What? Okay.
When you see me on the pulpit, I do it with all the fireworks that supersede what I normally do in court.
Are you serious?
So I'm at my happiest moment when I'm preaching the word and when I have to appear in court and prosecute a case on behalf of a client.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah. You
Get to the question. The question again was?
Do you think lawyers discredit the word of God in a way because of the myths around the fact that lawyers are not so honest?
Yeah,
lawyers are rich from taking people's things,
yeah,
and the like. That is very common.
Look, that myth should not just be particular with the profession of lawyers. I think it cuts across the spectrum.
Yeah.
Anywhere else in the world, in any career or profession, there will always be some elements of dishonest professionals, liars, unethical. So it's not just our profession. To be very candid with you, to give you a holistic and balanced response, I would say yes, the lawyers could have that proclivity of discrediting the work of God because of that myth. And that myth is to a certain extent true, because lawyers is a dovetail profession of different people built of different ethos and attitudes and usages, normative patterns and all the like. So yes, they could to a certain extent because of that. And I'm saying that they could not because they are merely lawyers, but because ordinarily they are human beings who have been affected by who have been affected by sin itself. You understand? Yeah. They do so not because they are primarily lawyers. They do so because they are human beings who are sinful, just like anyone else would in any particular instance, like politicians or an accountant for that matter. There are accountants who could be big on funds embezzlement. When it comes to accountability issues, they might be tempted to or pocket and use the money for their own personal interest. You understand? Yeah, but for me, I'm going to be, I'm not trying to sound my own horn, but I belong to the exceptional class. Like, I whittle ranks with the principle, or rather the perception. I'm on the exception side. Because the way I handle my cases is largely influenced by my religious background, or essentially my faith.
So where are we going right now?
Right now we are on our way to the Lobate High Court.
Okay.
I have an argument this morning on behalf of my clients. About 8 of them have an appeal before Justice Lekore. Oh, it's a baboon.
Yep.
Right. Interesting animal out there. Back to the question. Yes, on our way to the Lobate High Court, we are going to prosecute an appeal this morning. We have instigated this appeal because we lost an appeal at the Land Tribunal sometime back in 2020. The central legal issue that competes for adjudication by the court is whether the Land Tribunal Accord or below was right in dismissing our appeal on the basis that we or clients dismally failed to furnish a reasonable explanation for delaying to file their appeal timelessly, and secondly, whether the appeal, if it were to be heard on merits, it has any prospects of success. So essentially, our humongous legal task this morning is to persuade the court in buying this legal narrative that our client's case is merited on 2 propositions. That firstly, our client, as the dominus litis, as they would say in lingo, had a reasonable explication, like a clinical exposition, why they came late to court with their appeal, and secondly, whether they have a prospect of success, or what is sometimes called a reasonably arguable case. And it is our strongly held view that indeed they have a rationabili explicandum in Latin, and also that they have some prospect of success. So our duty this morning is to go and speak on those 2 critical issues, and we are very hopeful than ever that we are going to give it our all and best for a favorable outcome. We have no single doubt in this instance that we are going to do pretty much well.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know that arguing a case really excites you. I always see you very excited that, yo, today I'm going to argue. Are you going to argue?
Definitely.
And are you excited?
Like I said, I'm more than excited. You know, I normally say that in my entire career, in my life as an attorney, a practicing attorney, the centerpiece of my life, the highlight, the epic, is when I have to pitch up in court and marshal an argument in favor of clients. So it speaks for itself. In law, they would say Othusitse. It speaks for itself. So it speaks for itself that Mr. Mbeha today is elated, ladies and gentlemen. He's jubilant.
All right. Well, tell me about your childhood. Your childhood, my guy.
My childhood was very interesting.
Yeah.
In so many ways. Firstly, I was born in the northern hemisphere of Botswana, up north in the district of Chobe, in the village of Kasani. But I grew up between a cattle post and the village. My parents, mostly my grandparents, because for a fairly short space of time I stayed with my grandparents, who were farmers at the time, and we lived in what I would call a combination of a cattle post and lands. They were almost in the same area, just a walking distance from the cattle to the land. So yeah, so I grew up there, and quite early in life I acquired some life skills of farming and looking after our own cattle and other small livestock such as goats and chicken. Would learn how to in the Botswana culture, how to put a yoke to what do you call this thing? The male cows. What do you call them in English? The ox. Yeah. So we'll do the mold. Is it called in agriculture the mold board or plowing or plow or something? So I used to do that when I was a boy. I would go hunting, but my life when I think I was a little beyond 6 or 7. I started standard one, I think it's at 8 years old, fairly late.
Yeah.
I'm like a kid who would grow up in...
I like your daughter who started when she was 5.
Yeah, when 5.
Yeah.
So I would travel from the lands to the village, which was nearly 4 kilometers from there to school.
Every day?
So every day we would walk, or sometimes when we are lucky, in a week we would get a lift from some good Samaritan, but mostly the time it was there used to be a guy called Bruce, was a white man. He lived in the nearby village, so when he was passing by and finds us on our way to school, he would stop by and give us a lift, and sometimes just out of the kindness of some public servants who were driving government vehicles at the time to give us lift. But I think that most of the time the greater part of our life would be comprised of walking between the lands to the village or to school.
Animals? How about animals? I know that.
Yeah, it's a wild animal infested area.
Yeah.
But because of living in such a place, we would develop some sort of skills. Yeah, so we would know how to navigate through and dodge them. I remember particularly one morning we had we figured out that there were 2 buffaloes, and they were crossing the road from the water point to the forest. So we spotted them from a distance, and we also figured out that they equally spotted us from a distance. So what they did is, the 2 of them, the other one crossed the road, and they stood facing each other, looking at the road. So I think they were just ready for an attack. So fortunately we were able to discover it, and then we ran the other way around. We went to use the other path to
To school.
Like some walkway.
I would have gone back home.
Yeah, but we couldn't go back because obviously we knew. We also understood the animal behavior.
Yeah.
So we would be able to know what to do and what not to do. So it was pretty fun. Sometimes you could walk alone when maybe you are late for some reason. Say.
So you'd walk in clusters.
Yeah, we used to. Most of the time we'd walk as a group, right? Yeah, a group. I think most of the time we would be about 10 people, or sometimes a little bit more, because others from the other nearby cattle postal lands would join us. So yeah, it was fun field. Yeah. We never felt like we were pretty much suffering.
Yeah.
We just felt like, because we've never been exposed to anything more than that, so anything better. So the only better we knew was that.
Wow.
So it was just okay, and we would go there. The whole exercise or experience taught me to be tough in life, taught me to dream, to want to be better, and to take my education quite seriously. So I was a book person from quite an early age, so we would do exceptionally well in class, and all the way to high school. I did that for 7 years, from standard 1 to 7 years, from the lands to so like sometimes we have to jog a little bit if we feel like we are late, but most of the time we're just walking. So it taught me to be a tough person, to never give up on anything. So those to me became eternal and timeless lessons that I feel should also be passed to my own kids, even though the environment now is different. My kids live in an urban center, and I came from the antithesis of a primitive place.
Mr. Mbeha, please tell us about what led you to wanting to become a lawyer. I heard you saying that you've always wanted to be a lawyer. Is there any story behind it?
Yeah, there is always a story behind the story, you know. But it's quite funny the way that it began. One particular evening, I overheard my mom saying to my grandmama, there was a Form 5 student who was charged for a criminal offense because during some preparatory work towards their party, as they were looking forward to finish their or complete their Form 5, there was some contributions that were done, and he was some sort of the treasurer for the group. And then the guy decided to misappropriate the funds and use them for his own personal gain. He bought a suit for himself with that money, and then ultimately he was charged in court. So the story goes, and for some reason this guy was able to win that case. The way my mom put it was like, you know, the guy was very technical. He was big on English words and whatnot.
A Form 5.
Yeah, a Form 5 student. And then from that, I developed that spark of interest to study a bit of words.
Yeah, I know you're big on words.
Wordsmith, and then it began from there. And then later on, I went to do my junior secondary school at the nearby village, Kachikau in the Chobe.
Yeah.
So I was
in
Leswani CJS. So I was normally position 2, sometimes position 3 in class. There was a guy who hailed from, I would say he was my homeboy. He was a perennial position 1 guy. So very intelligent guy. We used to go to the library and read about careers.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really struck us at the time was lawyers in America, that they earned a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we'd look at that, and then because he was also so much good in science, he would be like, you know, I want to be a doctor, a surgeon, and that type of thing. But later on, when I went to so I remember when I was still at JC, I wrote my primary school teacher a letter indicating to him that I would love to be a lawyer, and not that he doubted my intelligence, but he was like, you know, well, I think it's a good idea, it's a good dream or ambition.
Yeah.
But it I was stuck. Unfortunately, for some reason, when the Form 5 results were out, I was below the cut-off points by 2 points. So I couldn't make it directly into the LLB degree. So I was shattered. I was pained, helpless, and hopeless. It took me days to get back on my feet. I was embarrassed.
If you have made it this far, it shows that you're loving this content. Kindly please subscribe, and like and comment. I love interacting with you guys in the comment section. Thank you so much.
But a little later, I discovered that there was other LLB programs that were offered outside Botswana, like in Namibia, South Africa, and whatnot. So, as others would say in a secular sense, luckily, I then realized that I qualified for external placement, the government. So I applied for external scholarship, external placement by the Ministry of Education at the time, and I was admitted for that, or called for an interview to come and select which school I'd want to go and pursue whatever I wanted to do. So I came through, and then while I was at it, I figured out that the only places that could offer me a place to study law was Malaysia and also Namibia. Unfortunately, I wasn't that much informed at the time, because there was yet another narrative that if you are going to study law outside Botswana, you might not be able to practice law in Botswana. And I was very clear on which jurisdiction I wanted to practice my law, and obviously it was Botswana. And it slowed me down to accept any invitation to go and study law outside. And it was difficult at the time, because I had also applied, actually before I came for that interview for external placement. I had applied. I had figured out that there was not all was lost, because I figured there was a diploma of law at the University of Botswana. So I applied for a diploma of law. At the time, the university used to offer us five call them preferences. Which one do you want to study in that hierarchical rank of preference? Like, you know, your number one would be the first. So there were 5. So my first preference was a diploma of law, and then my second, I think it was a BAS of social sciences, and some others like in the media and whatnot. I wasn't a science person because I was never been good in maths. So that would obviously tell you about my choices. So I settled for the least as my top priority, and then the degree courses followed later. But I was so adamant that I wanted to settle for law, with a view that after completing my diploma of law, I would then be enrolled for LLB. Unfortunately, I didn't know that it was so. Just to tie this with the external placement, I had to turn it down, yet not sure whether UB would admit me for diploma of law. So I just took a leap of faith and say, well, I'm gonna have to lay this one off and wait for UB. And then it took a little longer to get my response from UB that year, but for sure, before the semester could commence, I had gotten my response, and I was happily admitted into a diploma of law. So that's how the story ended about my journey to become a lawyer. I did my diploma of law for 2 years, because it was a 2 years course, our program, and then after that I could not immediately proceed to LLB in the following year, because I had to sponsor myself, and my mom could not afford to sponsor me at the time. Mind you, my mom has been for some time, or nearly all my school myself because the government policy at the time was that it could not sponsor me twice in first year. It could only sponsor me if I was admitted in second year. The university policy at the time was that you could not be admitted. You could not be admitted in first year. You have to start like afresh, because the way they had designed the diploma of law, which we learned quite late, unfortunately, was that the diploma in law was terminal. Like, it wasn't progressive, such that if you completed like in other faculties or other programs, you mechanically move into LLB and start your second or third year, as it were, in other with other programs. So in our case, it was different. So you have to face firstly the hurdle of ensuring that you are going to do very well in your diploma of law, because also it was difficult at the time to pass that diploma. And most of our some students would take up to 4 years, failing and retaking, and then their chances dwindling every now and then to make it to LLB. By the time that they finish, they're so exhausted. All they want is to get whatever money they might get from any employer, potential employer. Yeah. So I decided not to work at the time. It was still a bit marketable with your diploma. I remember I was invited for an interview by some local authority or local government for some bylaw officer, and I remember my cousin was encouraging me to pick it up, more so that I'm the firstborn.
Yeah.
We've got 4 other younger siblings. You need to take care of them. I was like, no, I'm not going to allow my dream to be compromised by my maybe
current
status quo.
Yeah.
I think I had to do some computation that if I were to accept that job, how much was I likely to make in the next 10 years versus how much I would make in the next 10 years with my LLB degree. So I felt like I would, even though I would take 5 more years at school and come back 5 years later, like 10 years combined, when I would have worked for 10 years as a bylaw officer. I felt like, it was much better being a lawyer than accepting whatever was available at the time. So that's how it happened. And then I spent 2 years. I spent 2 years of my LLB footing my own tuition fees. I had no one to pay for them. I had to go and work during vacation at some law firm and gather my own fees. So I wouldn't necessarily give credit to myself, but say to God, because all along I've been a very prayerful person. I believe so much in God. I have been frustrated. I almost saw my dream shut down on me because of the circumstances, which to some extent were beyond my control. But somehow God came through for me in a very amazing way. And today I'm here. I often say to those who are struggling or who are similarly circumstanced as me that, look, I completed my Form 5 in 2005, but the guys whom we went to university with and they directly did their LLB under normal circumstances were set to complete their LLB in 2011, and for sure most of them did. And I only started my LLB in 2009. In 2009, meaning that I would complete now later in 2014. So if you compare me to my colleagues whom we completed Form 5 with in 2005, I was like 8 years. I completed my LLB 8 years later.
No, wait, 8 years later, or you took 8 years to do your LLB?
No, I took 5. I took 2 years for diploma.
Yes, and
then
5
after
years.
that, I took a year working at some law firm in Francistown, trying to gather my fees for school fees. It took me a period of 8 years to ultimately become a lawyer, or graduate as a lawyer.
Yeah.
Whereas it took them only 5 years.
5 years. So you were 3 years later than your colleague.
Yeah, 3 years later. So my point of inspiration and encouragement is that I normally console myself by this statement to the effect that it doesn't matter how long it takes to get your dream important is that ultimately you will get there. It doesn't matter who gets there first. But the bottom line is that as long as we keep working, fighting for what we believe in, we will get there, all of us. Right now as I speak, all of us are there.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Wow.
So that is the story. Of course, I've left a lot of other details, but I think that is enough for your consumption.
Right now. Yes, Mr. Mbeha, I am really enjoying this interview and I'm learning quite a lot. Please tell me about the perceptions of your family. Was your family encouraging, supportive when you told them about your dreams? Because I hear you telling me that you told your teacher. Did you tell your mom or anyone else in your family, and what did they think?
Well, I remember back in 2002 or 3, I had opened up to one of my senior cousins, and he was full of negativity. They were quite dismissive. They were not very encouraging and uplifting, because they were like, you don't have what it takes to be a lawyer.
Ah, shame.
But I was never discouraged, because I didn't need their opinion to know that I can do law or not. So I was merely telling them out of my own benevolence. And then I remember there was yet another cousin also. They dismissed me. They dismissed me that well. They don't think I have what it takes. Similarly. And then on my mother's side, I never really had the occasion to sit her down, or either her sitting me down and influence me. I know occasionally she would say that, I think that was when I was done with my Form 5. I think my mom and my grandmom wanted me to become a nurse. And mind you, like I've said, I've never been strong in maths. Me and numbers don't see eye to eye, the type of thing. Of course, I'll do well in some other things, but not maths. But I'm not to say I was terribly bad in maths. Yeah, I think I was, right? Anyway, not important for now. The line of my career was purely personal. It was what I decided personally to settle for. There was very little influence from outside.
Do you have lawyers in your family?
No, never. There's never been a lawyer in my family.
Wow. I remember you told me
these guys that are going to court, the prison's car.
Okay.
It has some accused persons right there.
Some guilty, some...
Well, guilty if they have been convicted and are waiting for their sentence, but I would presume that they are still accused persons. They haven't yet been found guilty. Yeah.
Nice. I remember you told me once that there was a particular profession that you liked and idolized as a child.
Yeah, as a child, right? Yeah, that was back then as a child. Actually, quite in my nascent stages as a student at primary school.
Yeah.
I remember there was that thing of both for Setswana and English languages. There would be that moment when you have to do a composition. What do you want to be when you grow up? And most of us, and this is so funny, you know, most of us young boys at the time would always vie for, I want to become a driver. Why a driver? Because we would see those drivers back in the village, mostly driving those vehicles for the clinic. The way they would drive, man, the way it would take off, there would be so much. It would be so much dramatic, you know, so dusty. That's what we loved. And then the way they would accelerate.
Wow.
And we were like, this is the job, man. so yes, at one point, when I was still a standard 1 and 2 student, I dreamed of becoming a
driver, and secondly, a police officer or soldier. But mostly it was just an exchange between a driver for the government, but mostly for the clinic vehicles, government vehicles, or a soldier. A soldier just because you want to be that little tough boy, an African guy, that type of thing. So it was so, I don't know whether romantic is the right word, but it looked fantastic to be a soldier at the time, because like, you know, you can shoot, you can be a bouncer, that type of thing.
Okay, you know why I'm asking this question? I am just connecting it to the one for your family, like maybe what your family was seeing around them, around the village, because you grew up in the village. It was just
those were the only common professionals that you would see at the time. And also the girls on the other side, they would prefer to become a nurse or a teacher, because what you'd see is
around the village,
around the village would be teachers and nurses, mostly. Otherwise none. Otherwise the society was more agriculturally based, a composition of agriculture and horticulture and animal husbandry, those two. So you can never dream to be anything else. But funny enough, some of us, we did all our, like JC there, somehow we were able to dream beyond what
were
we
you
saw.
Exposed to television or?
Well, the only exposure we would have, we never had any television set at home. We would occasionally go to the public, we would normally see those public places. Like sometimes when there is a special event at the quarter, we say today there is a video about Jesus Christ, that type of thing, or a video on HIV and AIDS. And sometimes we'll go to, there were a few the public servants would have a television, and then you would pass by there, would leave you like a first day, read that type of thing, through the window or door, and mostly at the time it wasn't your normal DSTV. It was just watching those cassettes, the normal action movies, essentially that. And for those who would get exposed, normally when they came from a vacation or school break, they will gather around them. They will be telling us, we're watching this movie, this is what happened, and it felt so real, man. Like we also watched it, and then we also passed it by the word of mouth as if we as if we watched it.
So your imaginations were really active. You had to imagine most of the time.
Well, imaginary boys and girls.
Oh, so sweet. Okay, Mr. Mbeha, please tell us about your life as a law student now. Now that the hassle was over and now you're a student. Is law really that difficult? Is it a difficult subject to study? Or maybe just the entry requirements are tedious?
It is both, right? It's difficult. I think the convolution of law is premised on the I don't know whether it is the reasonable or unreasonable requirement to read a lot of cases. And you can imagine for a course, each course would have a minimum of 50 cases. And when you are doing your third year, fourth year, you are doing about 5 law courses. And right there you are talking about maybe minimum of 75 cases in a period of about 4 months or so. So 75 times 4 or 5 other courses. You can imagine how many cases you had to read, and you're talking about volumes and volumes of paper. So it needs somebody who has more than just passion for law, that even when your emotions wane and disappear, you could still find something inside you to keep you well in class, or exceptionally well in class. So that is where partly part of the challenge emanates from. Too much volumes of legal papers to go through. And yeah, law, generally speaking, if you got the principle right, it's like an equation. Like we would learn this thing at first year, that, you know, the argument of law is a syllogism argument. It has a major premise. I think it has a minor. Is it a minor premise, major premise, then conclusion? Like, for instance, if you say that if your principle is that human beings are mortal who die. So when you argue, would say X is immortal. The conclusion, therefore, is he would die because mortals die. For instance, might not make sense to you, right?
It doesn't.
Argument.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can be both, man. It can be a nightmare. It can be fun. So for me, I think it was really fun. When I completed my first year, my GPA was 4.4 out of 5, and it wasn't bad, because at least and again, there is a norm at the Department of Law at University of Botswana that at least back in the day, there were a few guys who would get a 2.1 GPA. So for me, I had a wonderful experience because I was in the category of guys who were able to get a 2.1. Not that I'm bragging, but I think it was just the amount of work put in, the efforts, and also grace. I like to always bring God in the picture and say, well, it's not me but God.
So you were a brilliant student from the beginning.
I would leave that for you to judge.
Okay.
I can tell you what I scored. I just said to you that I got a 2.1. So you would make your own judgment whether a student who graduates with a 2.1, that's like second class upper division, do they qualify to be a brilliant student or not? So that's for you to make a determination.
Okay, and then you graduated with a
3.9 GPA.
Were you like top something of?
No, the girl who was top got a 4 point. I think it was a 4.4.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was in the top 5 of our class. I could put it that way.
Wow. What a beautiful interview. Thank you so much for watching. May God bless you. Let us meet again for part 2, where we see Mr. Mbeha in court. Thank you.